My name is Audrey Vale. I am 33 years old, and I had been married to my husband Grant for 8 years, when his younger sister tried to destroy me at our anniversary party. Audrey, before you cut that cake, my brother deserves to know you have been having an affair, Marissa said. She said it loudly enough for the whole room to hear, with one hand wrapped around a champagne glass and the other holding up her phone like she had brought proof from heaven. 1 second earlier, everyone had been smiling at me. The cake was on the table. The candles were lit. Grant had his arm around my waist. Our friends were recording us. His parents were standing near the fireplace. It was supposed to be one of those soft, easy nights that make a marriage feel solid. Then Marissa stood up, smiled at me, and turned the whole room into a trial. The whispers started before anyone even asked what she meant. Grant stiffened beside me. I felt his hand loosen at my waist. He looked at his sister first, then at me, and I saw the confusion hit his face before the hurt did. Marissa took 2 small steps forward and angled her phone so the nearest guests could see it. I did not want to do this tonight, she said. But he deserves the truth. On the screen were messages that looked intimate. A man I did not know. A string of words that sounded like stolen tenderness. A plan to meet. A line about missing each other. A final message that looked filthy enough to make 2 guests glance away from me in embarrassment. Someone near the dining table muttered that it looked real. Grant swallowed hard and said my name so quietly it hurt more than if he had shouted. Audrey. That was it. Just my name. No anger yet. No defense either. Just the awful weight of a man asking the woman he had trusted for 8 years to tell him that what he was seeing was not true. Marissa watched my face like she had paid money for that moment. She thought I would panic. She thought I would cry. She thought I would start defending myself too quickly, the way innocent people sometimes do when they are humiliated in public. Instead, I looked at the phone in her hand, then at the television on the wall behind her, and set the cake knife down on the table, very gently. If you were me in that room, would you defend yourself right then? Or let the person ruining you say one thing too many? Marissa frowned at me. Why are you smiling? She asked. Because if you want everyone to see something tonight, I said we should use the bigger screen. The room went still. Grant turned toward me, not understanding. Marissa blinked once. I saw the tiniest shift in her face, the first crack, the first sign that she had expected chaos from me, not composure. What are you talking about? She said. I picked up my phone from the table and walked toward the television. I am talking about this, I said. If we are doing evidence tonight, let us do it properly. For a second, nobody moved. Then one of Grant's cousins, who always thought she was helpful in the worst moments, said that actually made sense. Marissa laughed too fast. Fine, she said. Go ahead. Explain your affair. I did not answer her. I plugged my own phone into the television. And before I tell you what everyone saw on that screen, I need to take you back 6 days, because by the time Marissa stood up with those fake messages, I already knew something was coming. I just did not know whether she was going to come for my marriage, my work, or both. 6 days before that party, I was in the small office behind the main conference room at Vale Hospitality, the family business Grant's father had built over 30 years. We owned 3 boutique properties, 1 wedding venue, and a management company that handled repairs, vendor contracts, and event scheduling. I oversaw operations and internal reviews. That meant the work nobody bragged about: the numbers, the invoices, the reserve accounts, the parts of the business that told the truth long before people did. That afternoon, I was reviewing quarter-end maintenance reserves when 2 things happened within 20 minutes of each other. First, I got a security alert on my phone. Someone had tried to access my cloud storage from an unfamiliar device. Then I found a discrepancy in the reserve account for emergency repairs. $84,000 was missing, not pending, not delayed, missing. I went over the account twice before I said the number in my head. Then I opened the transfer history and saw 3 outgoing payments made over 8 days to a consulting company I did not recognize. Belmere Advisory. It sounded clean, generic. The kind of name people choose when they want a lie to look like office furniture. I pulled the invoice files. They were thin, too thin, vague descriptions, no meaningful work product, no final approval trail from me, which meant someone had routed them around the normal review chain. I was still looking at the 3rd transfer when Marissa stepped into the doorway with 2 coffees and a smile that belonged in a commercial. Still here, she said. I thought everyone sane had gone home. I looked up too quickly, and for a second her eyes dropped to my screen. Just closing out a few things, I said. She walked in, set 1 coffee beside me, and leaned down just enough to seem casual. Everything all right? She asked. I kept my voice even. Depends what you mean by all right. She let out a little laugh. You always say things like that when you are staring at numbers, she said. Dad says you can find disaster in a clean spreadsheet. Then she straightened, smoothed her dress, and turned toward the door. Oh, she said, glancing back like an afterthought. The reserve account is still fine though, right? The question was so soft that anybody else would have missed what was wrong with it. I had not mentioned which account I was looking at. I smiled at her. Why would you ask that? She held my eyes for half a second too long. No reason, she said. Just asking. Then she left. I sat there with the coffee untouched and stared at the doorway after she was gone. People do not get nervous around spreadsheets unless the spreadsheet knows something. That night, I called Nina Hart, an old friend, who had spent years in digital security for hospitality groups bigger than ours. I sent her screenshots of the alert, the timestamp, the device notice, and the names of the folders inside my cloud storage. I do not need theories, I told her. I need a trail. She was quiet for a moment then, said the one thing that made my stomach go cold. If someone got into your files, they did not do it for curiosity, she said. They did it for leverage. Over the next 2 days, Nina pulled the login records tied to my accounts and matched them against device histories we already had in one of our internal systems. What she found was not subtle. Someone had gotten into an old folder of personal backups, photos, saved note drafts, a few archived messages from years ago that had no meaning on their own, but could be cropped, renamed, and arranged into something ugly. Then those materials had been exported from a laptop, not a phone. And that laptop had a device identifier that matched one used months earlier to sign into the family property scheduling portal under Marissa's credentials. When Nina said that, I did not speak for a second. Not because I was surprised, because a lot of little things from the last few years suddenly lined up so neatly I could almost hear them click. Marissa had never liked me. Some women do subtle dislike well. She never did. From the first month Grant and I were engaged, she had this polished little way of talking around an insult instead of through it. You are lucky my brother likes fixing people, she told me once at dinner. Another time when I stayed late helping their father untangle vendor contracts, she smiled at a cousin and said Audrey loves acting like she works harder than everybody else. Little things. Sharp little things. The kind that sound petty when repeated aloud, which is exactly why people get away with them. When Grant and I bought our home, she called it strategic. When I got more involved in the business, she called it convenient. When I disagreed with her about a budget review last winter, she told Grant I had started treating the company like it came with the marriage license. I ignored it for years, because women are expected to survive small cruelties with grace, and because every family has one person everyone quietly manages around. But this was not a cruel remark over appetizers. This was unauthorized access, fabricated evidence, a planned detonation. And if you like revenge stories where the quiet file matters more than the loud liar, subscribe now and stay with me, because what Marissa held up at my anniversary party was only the first lie on the screen that night. By the third day, I had the digital side nearly locked. On the financial side, I started with Belmere Advisory. The corporate filing led to a registered mailbox, not a real office. The registered agent was a woman named Dana Cross. Dana had been in Marissa's wedding party 3 years earlier, and had shown up in half her vacation photos since. That alone would have been ugly. It became worse when I found that one of the payments had been approved using a legacy operations credential Marissa still had, from the months she claimed she was helping her father with event scheduling. She was not just connected to the company, she had routed the money herself. Still, I wanted one more layer before I touched anything. So I called our outside accountant Mark Ellison and asked him to independently review the transfers and the vendor structure. I did not accuse anyone by name on that call. I just said I needed an immediate silent review of 3 reserve disbursements and the vendor behind them. The next afternoon, Mark called back. His voice had that careful tone professionals use when they know they are standing near someone else's family fire. You were right to flag it, he said. Belmere does not look like a legitimate operating vendor. I also found an internal memo attached to one of the transfer requests. It references a personal bridge need. I leaned back in my chair. A personal bridge for who? He hesitated. I cannot say that as fact from this alone, he said, but the supporting contact information circles back to someone with close ties to Marissa. That was enough. I did not need a dramatic confession or police tape to understand the order of events. Marissa had pulled money from a reserve account through a fake vendor tied to her circle. Then she realized I was looking at the numbers. Then someone broke into my files. Then fake affair messages were built from my own archived material. That sequence mattered. It meant the affair story was not random jealousy. It was a preemptive strike. If she could humiliate me first, if she could damage my credibility with Grant and his parents in one public blow, then anything I said afterward about missing money would sound like revenge. That was the real trap, not to embarrass me, to discredit me before I could speak. So I made my own file. I put the screenshots in order. First, the original security alert, then the login records, then the device match, then the export metadata that showed the fake message images were built on a laptop not captured from a live phone, then the reserve account transfers, then the Belmere filings, then the connection to Dana, then the independent accountant's summary. And because I do not believe in keeping the only copy of the truth on one small glass rectangle, I sent the full packet to Vail Hospitality's internal counsel and to Mark just before guests arrived at our house on the night of the security anniversary party. Not with accusations. With one sentence. Please review these materials first thing tomorrow morning. They concern unauthorized account access, fabricated personal evidence. and suspicious reserve disbursements. That mattered for two reasons. First, it timestamped everything before Marissa made her move. Second, it meant she could not erase the truth by grabbing my phone, smashing a screen, or crying hard enough in front of her parents. By the time she stood up with those fake messages, the truth was already outside our house. The night of the party started beautifully. That is what made her timing so vicious. The dining table was lined with food and candles. Someone had put together a slide reel of old photos on mute before dinner. Grant looked handsome and easy in a dark jacket he only wore when his mother begged him to dress like a real adult. Friends from college were there. 2 of our neighbors, his parents, 1 aunt, 3 cousins, enough people to make humiliation feel like architecture. Marissa arrived carrying a bottle of sparkling wine and kissing cheeks like she had not spent the week trying to burn my life down. "You look radiant," she told me at the door. "Thank you," I said. For a second I wondered if she knew I knew. Then I saw the tiny shine in her eyes and understood something worse. She thought she was still ahead. For the first hour she played the role perfectly. She laughed in the right places. She complimented the food. She asked Grant if he remembered the beach trip we took in year 2 of the marriage. But every so often I caught her drifting to one side of the room with somebody different, murmuring a sentence, then glancing toward me. A cousin, a friend of Grant's, my mother-in-law. She was seeding the room before detonating it. Grant noticed my expression once and asked if I was all right. I touched his arm and said I was just tired. That was the one lie I told that night. I was not tired. I was waiting. When the cake came out, people gathered in the living room. The lights were softened. Phones came up. Grant pulled me close and smiled down at me. 8 years, he said. That still sounds strange. I laughed and said it sounded impossible. Then Marissa stood. "Audrey, before you cut that cake, my brother deserves to know you have been having an affair." I have replayed that moment in my head more than once, and what I remember most clearly is not the words. It is the sound that followed. Not one sound. Many. A glass touching wood too hard. Someone sucking in breath. A little startled laugh from the far end of the room that died halfway out. Then, silence. Marissa walked forward with her phone raised. "I did not want to do this tonight," she said, "but he deserves the truth." She showed the nearest guests first. That was smart in a vicious kind of way. Let the horror spread face to face before taking it public. Let other people become witnesses before the accused can respond. Within seconds, the screen was passed into the atmosphere of the room. People did not need to hold it. They only needed to know others had seen it and looked disturbed. Grant looked at the phone, then at me. "Tell me this is not real," he said. That hurt. It hurt because he did not accuse me. He asked me to rescue him from the possibility that he had just been made into a fool in his own house. Marissa moved in fast. "She has been lying to you for months," she said. "I did not know how to tell you. I tried to stay out of it, but I could not watch this and stay quiet. That was almost the most offensive part. The performance of reluctance. As if she had dragged herself toward this cruelty for moral reasons. I let her finish. Then I looked at the television on the wall and said very calmly, "If we are doing evidence tonight, let us use the big screen." The words landed oddly in the room like something from the wrong script. Marissa blinked. "What?" I lifted my phone. I said if everyone is going to sit in judgment, I would rather they see the right file. I walked to the television stand, crouched, plugged in the cable, and waited for the screen to recognize my phone. There is something powerful about moving slowly while somebody else is trying to rush a lie through a room. It makes people notice who is afraid. If the person who just tried to bury you in front of your own family was hiding something worse, would you expose it right away, or let them talk until they had nowhere left to run? The screen came alive. At first it showed only my home screen. That alone made the room tilt a little. Because if I had really been cornered, I would not have looked that steady. I opened a folder labeled only with the date from 6 days earlier. Marissa went pale so fast it almost felt indecent to watch. "What is this?" she said. "The beginning," I said. I opened the first file. The television filled with a digital security report. The font was plain. No drama. Timestamps. Device history. Access attempts. Export records. Marissa laughed sharply. "You are changing the subject." "No," I said. "I am correcting it." I pointed to the top line on the report. 6 days ago, someone attempted to access my cloud archive from an unrecognized device, I said. Then they succeeded. They opened old personal folders. They downloaded material. Then those materials were exported as new image files from a laptop, not from my phone. One of Grant's cousins leaned forward. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, "those messages on Marissa's phone were not screenshots of a real conversation. They were fabricated from archived material and assembled somewhere else." That started the second wave of whispers. Grant stepped closer to the television. Marissa tried to cut across me. "This is ridiculous. Anybody could make a fake report." I nodded. "That is true, which is why I did not stop there." I opened the second file. On the screen was the device identifier history Nina had matched against one of our internal systems. A line halfway down connected the laptop used to export the fake images with a prior login on our scheduling portal under Marissa's name. I did not need to raise my voice. This laptop identifier matches the one used to sign into the Veil event system under your credentials 3 months ago, Marissa, I said. Grant turned slowly toward his sister. Marissa's face had lost all its color. That does not prove anything, she said. Someone could have used my computer. Maybe, I said. But then they also used your access trail, your timing, and your taste in revenge. Nobody laughed. The room had moved past shock and into recognition. Not certainty yet for everyone, but enough. My mother-in-law took one step back and lowered herself into a chair without taking her eyes off the screen. Grant still had not spoken. He was staring at the device line like his brain had to read it 5 times before it would agree to the shape of what his sister had done. Then he looked at Marissa and said very quietly, "What did you do?" She looked at him, then at me, then at the guests. Nothing she said too fast. "She is twisting this because she got caught. Caught doing what I asked. Cheating on your brother," she snapped. I opened the 3rd file. The television showed the export metadata from the fabricated images. File creation time, source path, editing history, export sequence. Again, I translated instead of lectured. These images were created 2 days after I flagged an issue in the company reserve account, I said. Not months ago, not over time, all at once, on a laptop, in one sequence. They were built for tonight. That was the moment the room turned. Not fully, but decisively, because people can forgive ugly facts more easily than ugly intent. And now intent was all over the screen. Grant took one step away from me. For a second that could have looked bad, but he was not stepping away from his wife. He was stepping toward the television, toward the evidence. Marissa's voice started to shake. "You always do this," she said to me. "You always make everything into some little case file." That almost made me smile. Because, yes, that is exactly what I had done, and it was the reason she was no longer controlling the room. Then I opened the 4th file. The reserve account history filled the television. 3 outgoing transfers. 3 dates. 3 amounts. At the bottom, the total. $84,000. I heard someone near the fireplace say, "Oh my God." I let the silence stretch before I spoke. "These transfers came out of the emergency repair reserve for the business," I said. "I found them 6 days ago. 2 days later, someone broke into my files. 2 days after that, fabricated affair messages were exported from a laptop tied to Marissa's device history." I turned toward her. "You did not build those messages because you were hurt," I said. "You built them because I saw the money." Marissa actually flinched. Grant looked from the television to his sister like he no longer recognized the distance between those two things. "What money?" he said. I opened the 5th file. Belmere Advisory's registration appeared on the screen. Mailbox address. Registered agent. Dana Cross. Then beside it, a photo from Marissa's own public social account from last year, Dana with her arm around Marissa on a yacht, both of them laughing into the wind. A few guests made the connection before I had to say it. "That company is tied to Dana," I said. "Dana is tied to Marissa." One of the transfer credentials was an old operations access still active under Marissa's profile. "This is not true," Marissa said. I clicked again. Mark's review summary appeared on the screen, stripped down to the one line that mattered. Vendor appears non-operational. Supporting documentation insufficient. Transfer structure inconsistent with legitimate reserve disbursement. I did not say a word for a second. Then I looked at Grant. "I asked for an independent review yesterday morning," I said, quietly. "Before this party. Before any of this. Because I knew if I confronted her too early, she would do exactly this." Marissa's breathing had turned shallow. She took one step toward the television like she meant to unplug it. Grant moved before I did. "Do not touch that," he said. It was the first time his voice had any force in it all night. Marissa stared at him like she had been slapped. I kept going. "The digital break-in was real," I said. "The fake affair messages were assembled from my archived files. The reserve money was moved through a fake vendor tied to your friend. And the timing says exactly what this was. I found the money. You knew I found it. So you stood up in my house at my anniversary party and tried to make me the story before the account became the story." No one in the room moved. Then Grant asked the question that finally cracked her. "How much did you take?" Marissa swallowed hard. "I did not take it," she said. "I only borrowed it until I could put it back. That was it. Not a scream. Not a dramatic confession. Just one desperate correction that admitted everything. Borrowed." My father-in-law sat down slowly like his knees had gone weak. My mother-in-law covered her mouth. Grant closed his eyes for 1 second, then opened them and looked at his sister with a kind of grief I had never seen on his face before. "You stole from the company," he said, "and you tried to destroy my marriage to hide it." Marissa shook her head violently. "I was protecting you," she said. "She is taking over everything. She was going to turn you against your own family. No, I said. I stepped closer, not loudly, not angrily, just close enough that she had to look at me. You were not protecting family, Marissa. You were protecting the money I found. That line did something final to the room, because everyone knew it was true. Family is the word people use when they want to wrap selfishness in something sacred. Marissa started crying then, but even that felt late. Not because tears cannot be real, because timing tells on people too. Grant looked at the television once more, then at me. Is this all of it? He asked. No, I said. Just what I needed for tonight. Then I gave Marissa the part she had never planned for. Before guests arrived, I sent the full file to company counsel and to our outside accountant, I said, time-stamped. So whatever happens in this room, this does not disappear when the cake is cleared. Marissa stared at me. You sent it out, she whispered. Yes, I said. That was the first moment she looked truly afraid. Not embarrassed. Not angry. Afraid. Because humiliation passes. Files do not. Grant moved to the front door and opened it. You need to leave, he said. Marissa looked around the room for help. No one gave it to her. Not her parents. Not the cousins. Not the friends she thought would enjoy seeing me fall. The room that had been willing to believe her 15 minutes earlier had no appetite left for carrying her. She picked up her purse with shaking hands. As she passed me, she stopped like she wanted to say something cruel enough to wound me one last time. Nothing came out. She walked to the door. Grant did not touch her. He did not need to. He held the door open until she stepped through it, then closed it behind her with a quiet click that sounded louder than anything else that night. The room stayed frozen for a few seconds after she was gone. Then everybody did what people do when a family truth finally rips open in public. They looked at the floor, at their glasses, at each other, anywhere but directly at the damage. Grant turned to me. I am sorry, he said. Just that. I am sorry. He looked wrecked, and for the first time all night I let myself feel how much the sight of him hesitating had hurt me. There is always one private injury inside a public humiliation. Mine was not Marissa's voice. It was the space between Grant seeing the fake messages and Grant choosing to stand still until the evidence moved him. I believed you, he said, and stopped, then corrected himself. No, I wanted to believe you. I should have done better than that. I nodded once. It was all I could give him in that moment, not because I did not love him, because love does not erase the shape of a wound the second the truth arrives. One of our friends cleared his throat from the back of the room and asked almost apologetically, "Are we still cutting the cake?" A few strained laughs escaped around the room. I looked at the table. The candles had burned low. The knife was still where I had set it down when Marissa first stood up. The cake that had almost become the backdrop for my humiliation was still waiting to be used for what it was meant for. I walked back to the table. Grant followed, but this time he did not reach for me until I turned toward him. Then I let him take my hand. I picked up the knife and looked once at the dark television screen. A few minutes earlier, it had held a lie meant to bury me. Now it held nothing. It did not need to. Everybody in that room already knew what had been shown there. I looked at the guests and said, now we can. So we cut the cake. People clapped too softly at first, then a little stronger, relieved to have something ordinary to do with their hands. No one talked about Marissa again that night. Not out loud. They did not need to. The truth had already done its work. The next morning, company counsel called. Then the accountant. Then Grant's father. The review moved forward exactly the way it should have. Slowly, formally on paper. Not with a dramatic arrest at the door, not with instant justice designed for a movie, but with the kind of cold process that leaves marks where they belong. That part mattered to me more than a loud ending ever could. Because real revenge is not always a scene. Sometimes it is a record, a timestamp, a file that reached the right desk before the liar reached for her phone. Marissa wanted one moment at my anniversary party, where the whole room would look at me and see a woman who had betrayed her husband. She got her moment, just not the way she planned. The whole room did turn against someone that night. It just was not me. And if you like smart revenge stories where the truth lands harder than shouting, subscribe and stay with me for the next one.